Dear friends, welcome to Learning Solutions, a channel dedicated to the study of English language and literature. My name is Shiv Narayan. Today I am going to talk on what is literary criticism. But before that, I request you to subscribe to the channel so you will not miss the notifications of my upcoming videos. The word criticism in an ordinary sense means the act of expressing disapproval of somebody or something and opinions about their faults or bad qualities. This definition of the word is completely negative, but when we transfer the same word from the mundane world to the academic world and use it to discuss literature, it gets completely transformed and starts behaving positively. In the field of literary studies, the word is generally called as literary criticism. This is what we are going to discuss in this talk. The word criticism is of Greek origin. It was derived from the word kritikos, meaning able to make judgment, which came into English language via Middle French in the 15th century as critique, meaning criticism, and therefore the activity of criticism is judgment, and literary criticism is the adventure of judgment on works of literature. From this it becomes easy to understand the nature and function of literary criticism. In simple words, we can define literary criticism as an activity of examining excellencies and defects of literature and its artistic worth. Now let's see what the champions of literature said about literary criticism. Sainsbury defines it in the following words: criticism busies itself with the goodness or badness, the success or ill success of literature from the purely literary point of view. According to Matthew Arnold, criticism is a disinterested endeavor to learn and propagate the best that is known and thought in the world. Spingun puts it as the sole task of criticism to answer three questions: what has the artist tried to express? How has he succeeded in expressing it? Was it worth expressing? T.S. Eliot says, criticism is the commentation and exposition of works of art by means of written words, and in the end of criticism is the elucidation of works of art and the correction of taste. Out of all these select definitions, we can conclude that the activity of criticism is not as simple as it seems. All these definitions bring out the complex nature of criticism and its functions. As a matter of fact, the view of criticism has varied from critic to critic and age to age. There are as many theories of criticism as there are critics. This is so because the attitude towards criticism is determined by a number of factors. One, by subjective nature of the critic, that is, his likes or dislikes, his prejudices and predilections. Two, the view of criticism is directly related to the critic's own intellectual preoccupation and his philosophy or outlook on life. 3. A critic with a moral and religious bias would be of the view that the function of criticism is to examine the moral worth and significance of a work of literature. On the contrary, one with a more artistic bent of mind would hold that the function of criticism is chiefly aesthetic appreciation. 4. Originally, the theory of criticism is closely connected with the theory of poetry. Therefore, the idea of criticism varies in accordance with the idea of literature. 5. Critical theories are closely connected with the spirit of the age, that is, the intellectual and moral environments in which the critic lives and has his being. Thus, in the modern age, with unprecedented development in social and behavioral sciences, psychology, sociology, anthropology, etc., we have the psychological and sociological approach to criticism. Marxism has given rise to Marxist literary theory of criticism, and existentialism has given rise to existential criticism. As a conclusion of all these factors, it can be said that the scope of criticism has widened so much, and in the course of time, it has become more complex in nature. Enough of theory of criticism. Now let's find out what is the function of criticism. In simple terms, literary criticism consists in asking and answering rational questions about literature. First of all, such an inquiry may be directed towards literature in general, leading a better understanding of the nature and value of literature, and a better appreciation of the pleasure proper to literature. Secondly, the inquiry may be directed towards particular works of literature, and its individual and distinctive qualities may be examined. the matter, the manner, the technique, and language of a piece of literature may be put to searching examination, and in this way its literary worth may be assessed. This may help the reader to form a better idea of literary merit and also facilitates the task of the writer. Thus, the function of the criticism is not fault finding, nor to pick holes in a given work of literature, nor to praise some favorite author. Rather, criticism is the science of forming and expressing correct judgment upon the value and merit of works of literature. The views and the role of critics regarding the functions of criticism have kept on changing through the ages. Every age has tended to assign a different function or functions to criticism. The earliest systematic critic, Plato, was concerned with the problem of defining the utility of poetry in the educational system of his ideal state, found poetry immoral and untruthful, so banished poets from his ideal commonwealth. His approach was fundamentally utilitarian. Later on, Aristotle took on the challenge of Plato and asserted the superiority of poetry over philosophy. In 16th century, Sir Philip Sidney wrote his famous treatise in defense of poetry in line with Aristotle. All through the Renaissance, the chief purpose of critical writing was to set up a defense of poetry and to emphasize its moral value. All through the neoclassical age, criticism was concerned with demonstrating that poetry both instructs and delights. It was during the Romantic era a number of critics wrote to promote a better understanding of the process of creation. The best of such critics have been poets themselves, and they have written in order to convey their literary theories to their readers. William Wordsworth and Samuel Coleridge were the prominent poets who presented their poetic theories. The purpose of Wordsworth's criticism was to explain to his readers his own poetic theory. Coleridge made minute and subtle studies of the process of poetic creation and tried to formulate principles of poetic composition. During the Victorian era, Matthew Arnold wrote that criticism is the endeavor to learn and propagate the best that is known and thought in the world. Such criticism establishes a current of noble ideas and thus creates the proper atmosphere in which great literature becomes possible. In the modern times, T.S. Eliot has given considerable thought to poetic theory and through his criticism has done much to stimulate rethinking. Criticism of such poet critics is of much value and significance. Later on, there has been a considerable widening of the scope of criticism. There is a bewildering multiplicity of views and theories regarding the scope and function of literary criticism. Broadly speaking, modern criticism is of two kinds: extrinsic criticism and ontological criticism. Extrinsic criticism takes into consideration the current psychological, sociological, and cultural concept and relates a work closely to the life and age of its writer. It studies the impact of social conditions on literature and also how far the literature tends to mold the age in which it is written. Ontological criticism, on the other hand, focuses its attention entirely and exclusively on the work under study. Ontological critics are well known by the name of new critics. For them, the poem is the thing in itself and the text is minutely examined and studied without any extrinsic considerations. So friends, this was the discussion on literary criticism. I hope you would get some benefit out of it. Thank you. See you in the upcoming video.